Yes. Welcome, everyone. Cannabis News with Joe Klare, July 13th, 2018. It's presented, as always, by the Marijuana Times. Check us out at marijuanatimes.org. Click the video tab on marijuanatimes.org, and you will find all the episodes of Cannabis News. Also, a bunch of great articles on there, links to our social media networks, and more. Don't forget, we're back on YouTube. Subscribe on YouTube. Search the Marijuana Times on there. Click the little notification bell icon so you'll be alerted when new episodes of Cannabis News have been posted. You can also search the Marijuana Times on Apple Podcasts. That'd be awesome of you. Today we're talking about a story I wrote on marijuanatimes.org about the band Slightly Stoopid. They have a new album out. We'll tell you about that. Also, federal marijuana law reform. It's more popular than ever, but there was a logjam we have talked about before. We'll talk more about that coming up. Also, a reporter from the Detroit Free Press is going to cover marijuana in Michigan. Took a trip to Colorado. She told us what she found in Colorado in anticipation of course, medical marijuana in Michigan and possible recreational legalization this November in Michigan as well. All that is coming up, of course. But first, I have to tell you that Cannabis News is brought to you by Natureside. Nature-side.com. Side is spelled CIDE. Check out their organic, all-natural pesticides. Be safe, grow safe, poison-free, be regulatory compliant, all that stuff. You can do it all with Natureside. If you're growing in the state where it's legal to cultivate cannabis, well, there's going to be regulations. You need to pass those regulations when it comes to pesticides. Natureside can help you do that. Nature-side.com, a proud sponsor of Cannabis News. This is the first story. As I said, by yours truly, over at marijuanatimes.org. Slightly Stoopid and the culture's impact on marijuana law reform. I've talked a lot about on this show and in my writing about culture, pop culture, the need for the normalization of cannabis, the mainstreaming of cannabis, and of course culture is one of the things that drives that. And as I point out in the article, Slightly Stoopid is one of the bands. If you don't know the band, first of all, go to slightlystoopid.com. Check out the article. It's linked in the description. There's a link to the how you can order their album, how you can stream it. Their new album, I've listened to it a few times. I've listened to it before it was available for streaming. And it's, if you like Slightly Stoopid, you're going to love this album. If you like, and I point this out in the article, if you like just chill summer music, well, you're going to like this album as well. They got to do a lot of collaborations. They did with a lot of their childhood idols, childhood heroes, just a ton of great chill summer reggae music. Slightly Stoopid is a very popular band. They've long used, they're not a weed band. Most of their songs have nothing to do with marijuana, but they have used their influence over the years to fight for and be activists for cannabis law reform. I linked to an article from 2010 when they were on tour with Cypress Hill in California in support of Prop 19 in 2010. Of course, you remember that ultimately went down to defeat. But even before that, they were speaking out about marijuana legalization. We got some quotes from the lead singer of Slightly Stoopid here about the album and more. Go check it out. Click that link in the description to see the story. And of course, go stream the new album. So if you're a Slightly Stoopid fan, you probably already know that it's, the album's coming out. But if you've maybe just heard of them and you thought, oh, what's this all about? Well, chill summer reggae music for recreating with some cannabis. If you do a combination of those things, even a couple of those things, you're going to like the album. Go check it out. It's called Everyday Life, Everyday People. Slightlystoopid.com. You can find them, of course, on all the social media networks and, of course, all of the streaming services, Spotify and iTunes, and you know the drill. Google. You know all of that. So go check them out. And thanks to Slightly Stoopid for talking with us for the article. And again, go check out their new album. This next story comes from MJBizDaily.com. It's their chart of the week. Federal cannabis policy reform at a standstill despite record numbers of bills in Congress. A record number of bills in Congress. If you're watching the video, you can see the chart right there and the way things have increased since the 106th Congress, 1999 and 2000, how gone from having one bill a year introduced in the House to so far this year, or so far in the 115th Congress, rather, 27 bills introduced in the House and 14 bills introduced in the Senate. It's nearly identical to the total number of pro-cannabis bills introduced between 1999 and 2015. More bills will likely be introduced before the current meeting of Congress ends on January 3rd, 2019. That would be the end of the current Congress, which is the 115th Congress. Don Murphy's Director of Federal Policies. The Washington, D.C.-based Marijuana Policy Project believe the growing body of legislation favors cannabis is being driven by three factors. Elected officials are getting heat from home about the need for marijuana law reform, increasing awareness of problems with existing marijuana laws like banking, access to banking, and high tax burdens, and anti-marijuana congressional committee chairs that have stopped pro-cannabis legislation from moving forward in Congress has been giving lawmakers few outlets to voice their support for policy reform. It's kind of a backlash to that. We've talked a lot about Pete Sessions. He has done most of the blocking when it comes to these bills. He's a Texas congressman. We've mentioned him in articles on marijuanatimes.org, and of course in this show before we've highlighted his basically one-man wrecking crew when it comes to obstruction of these marijuana bills, especially in the House. As far as what you can do besides supporting efforts to get Pete Sessions out of his seat in Texas, which former executive director of Marijuana Policy Project Rob Campia apparently is making his life's work now, or at least one of his focuses, is getting Pete Sessions thrown out of his seat in Texas. It seems ridiculous. You know, if it's one thing if the full House and the full Senate votes on something, they vote it down. But one guy blocking everything, well, it just doesn't seem like the way things are supposed to work. It's what we've gotten used to as far as how things work. That's not the way things are supposed to go. You know, if we're going to do this thing that we pretend to do, where all we have representatives and they're going to vote on this, and then straight up and down vote, and whoever wins, wins, and that's what we've been doing for hundreds of years. If we're going to pretend we're still doing that, then we have to keep up the facade. We have to keep up the charade, if you will, of doing that. Or we're just going to let one guy just block everything. These bills, a lot of these bills have major support in the House and Senate, and we need to see just how much support. You know what you can do: keep tweeting and writing and emailing and calling and all that stuff. Your representatives, as far as getting behind these things. I have my representatives. I'm doing pretty well. I'm in the congressional district in Kentucky of Thomas Massey. He supports a lot of marijuana law reform. My senators are Rand Paul, who's very pro marijuana law reform, and Mitch McConnell, who's the man who got industrial hemp legalized nationwide, almost single-handedly. I mean, obviously he had some help, but he was the force behind the industrial hemp bills that have been seen in Congress. So, if you live in a state where where your representative's on the fence or whatever, let them know. As I said many times before, it may seem like a little bit, it may not seem like a big deal, but everybody's voices together, it tends to make some noise, and that's what we need right now is noise to start getting some of these bills rammed through Congress. I think that's the official political speak. You ram them through the Congress. That's an official term. That's what we go with. That's what we go with here. We go with the scientific official terms for things. This last story is from Freep.com. 5 things I found surprising about legal marijuana in Colorado. It's by Kathleen Gray from the Detroit Free Press. As I said earlier, basically she's going to be the new marijuana beat writer for Michigan and for the Detroit Free Press. Going to cover medical marijuana there and possibly recreational marijuana if it's passed in November. So she took a fact-finding trip to Colorado, talked to a bunch of business owners, lawmakers, people, all that stuff. A bunch of different people interviewed and involved. She interviewed a bunch of people involved in the cannabis industry. You can look at the link, again, in the description of the video and read the entire article. But some of the things she highlights is you really expect, I guess, if you're walking through like the streets of Denver, you expect to smell a lot of weed, but public consumption is not legal there. So that's not really a thing that you run into. Also, marijuana business is touted as a modern-day gold rush by many who hope to get into the industry, but the cost is also high. She said across the board, marijuana business owners complained about the federal law that still considers marijuana an illegal drug. As a result, the federal tax burden on marijuana is pretty incredible. Section 280E of the Internal Revenue Service Tax Code says that businesses can't write off the normal business expenses, such as payroll, rent, or utilities, on their federal tax returns if their business involves the sale of an illegal drug. Of course, that's tax problems that we've mentioned many times before, and what I just mentioned earlier. When it comes to legal cannabis, advertising is very strictly regulated in Colorado. Said the only prominent advertising we saw was a placard on a bus that reminded people that they can't consume marijuana in public spaces. Basically, other than that, there's you might see a little like green cross on a storefront, and that's about the The extent of it, Colorado's marijuana advertising regulations strictly restrict and outright prohibit ads on television and radio, the internet, and at sponsored events. She also points out the lack of baggies. It's one of the old stoners, the old marijuana users. They remember the baggies. The baggies were big, but now, of course, there's all kinds of different containers. There's all kinds of different things that instead of just getting a bag of weed, you can get a bag of gummy bears or an infused drink, and there's just all kinds of stuff going on. She also says marijuana has become second nature for Colorado. Everyone seems kind of blasé about the proliferation of pot in the state. No one seems particularly up in arms about the legalization or overjoyed by the success of the business. And that's the way it should be. Marijuana should not be even noticed. The only reason marijuana is noticed and such a big deal is made of it is because, outside the community, obviously, the cannabis community, the stoner culture, whatever you want to call it, there's always going to be a part of that there because it's a big deal to us because it's, it's what we like, it's what we're involved in, it's what we talk about. But the fact that it's a big deal outside of the cannabis community is only because of prohibition. The only reason there's any need for any activism is because of prohibition. If prohibition would never have happened, there wouldn't be a NORML, there wouldn't be an MPP. I'd probably be sitting here with, 14 bongs in front of me doing product reviews and stuff instead of bringing you news and talking about bills and measures and freedom and votes and contacting your state lawmakers and all that other stuff. It needs to be blasé. It needs to be something that we don't care about. That's what legal things are. We don't run around talking about milk. We don't talk about milk all the time. I'm sure there's fan groups, people who love milk, and they talk about milk all the time. I like milk. Milk's great. But I'm not outside, holding a sign that says we need to legalize milk. I know there's some issues with, raw milk and regulations and stuff like that. I'm not getting into that. It's just an example. Calm down. Things that are legal, things we don't worry about, are things we shouldn't have to worry about. The only reason we're worried about them is because we're worried about getting arrested. And we don't want to get arrested. So we're worried about it. We make a big deal about it. Yeah, but one day it'll be like it is in Colorado. Blasé. That's the word I want to describe how people who don't, anybody hears about cannabis. Like, I'm blasé about it. It's not a big deal. Nobody's going to jail for it. It's fine. If I want some, I can go down the store and buy some. If I don't, I won't. Simple. That's the way life should be. But instead, we continue on with this show. It's the end of the week. Go start your weekend. Thanks to everybody who checks out marijuanatimes.org. Thank you to Natureside, nature-side.com, and their organic, all-natural pesticides. Keep sharing, liking, commenting on the videos. And as long as prohibition exists in any form when it comes to cannabis, and we need to bring you news and information and all other stuff, well, we'll be here. That's what I do. And I'm not going anywhere. I got nothing better to do. But sit here and talk to you people. So help me out. Click the like, share, comment, all that stuff. Thanks, everybody, for checking us out. We'll see you next week on Cannabis News.